everyone, Rarity Dash here, time for another Patreon-sponsored Blind Reaction. And this one comes to you courtesy of Super Monoman, who has requested that I react to another Animelee video from Mother's Basement. This time it's All Might versus All for One that we're looking at, and that should be good. I mean, it's the most emotionally impactful fight in the series, I'd say. Though, I mean, I guess... I guess Bakugo versus Deku Part 2 is kind of close in a weird way. Though it's kind of on the other end of what the series is all about. But no, this one is definitely first place, I would say. Just, it's such a powerful moment, especially the very end with the United States Smash, and just every action taken in the fight has such weight to it that it's really incredible. That said, it's not really the best fight just in terms of, like as an actual fight scene. If you look at it purely as a fight scene, it's not really the most interesting, mostly because All for One, he's kind of a bit boring in terms of his actual fight style. He just sort of sits there, or stands there, and throws out these power attacks, and it's really not that compelling to watch, I'd say. There's not like a lot of motion. There are still some really cool animated moments in the fight, I'd say, but just in terms of action, in terms of pure action, even like All Might versus Nomu in Season 1, I would say is better, but definitely not in terms of emotional weight. Also, before I get started, I do gotta say that this is a video that does exceed the limit that I set back in May, and initially I was going to split this video, and in the case here, and in other cases like this, I've decided that I'm not going to do so. I'm going to just do the full video, and that's for a couple reasons. One, I kind of really made my patrons wait for these reactions. If you aren't aware, most of the or all of the reactions that I'm going to be looking at over the course of the next couple weeks are all requests that were made back in May, before this 4-month break that I had. So my patrons have really had to wait, and I feel bad about that. And especially in a case like this, I feel like I owe it to them to kind of do the full video. And the other thing is, if you didn't see the update, this is actually going to be the last batch of Patreon videos. I'm going to be replacing Patreon with other means to make requests. For one thing, we have the weekly live reaction streams, which have already started. Did the first one last Saturday, and there's another one coming up this Saturday. And there's also going to be another means to just make direct requests via a PayPal that I have set up, though that's not going to be active until a couple months from now, probably. But this is the last batch of requests I'm taking through Patreon. So because of that, and since people had made requests that were going to be split up in parts, it just makes more sense to do them all here right away, rather than count on them to request the rest of the video in the future. So that's how I'm going to do it. But enough about that. Let's go ahead and start the video. Here we go.
What is it that makes a great
Do you like the hat?
scene great? What separates the
First time wearing this
from
one.
the also
If you are unaware, in my fan mail
unboxings,
unboxings, someone sent me a bunch of My Hero hats. So
I'm Jeff Thu, and this
is one of them. And it seemed fitting. I think my favorite is
Today
still
we're
the
going back
Momo
to the
hat
world of
that I
My
have.
Hero Academia to take a look at what
I have this one,
is this show's best fight
and
so
a
far,
Bakugo one, and a Deku
all-time
one.
best fights in anime, period. All Might versus All for One does everything that a good fight scene needs to, and
if
goes
you look
beyond. It has some of the
impact.
highest stakes of any fight in the series, putting the life of a character that at least some of us care about on the line, while also effectively putting the stability of the entire world at risk. These stakes and their payoff feel well earned from a narrative standpoint.
Into the season, I think after episode 23, was it?
Since we first saw All Might's crippling injury. Yet it comes as
after that episode, I think everyone cares about Bakugo. I would hope.
Since, well, you don't expect to see the strongest villain in your superhero story show up unannounced for a final showdown with your strongest hero at the climax of Act Friggin' 1. Well, unless you caught all of the anime's subtle Star Wars allusions, then you might have expected to see Vader take Obi-Wan out a little early, but even then, this battle goes down with a lot more fanfare fire and explosions than that iconic Star Wars scene.
Yeah.
The animators went all out with just about every second of this fight, packing it with Sakuga and interesting poses and shot compositions, while going the extra mile
there's some
shots where they could have taken easy shortcuts. It features some of the best uses of the show's incredible soundtrack to date, which underscore a number of powerful, game-changing story beats. Because, yeah, this fight tells a story, a hell of a good one that marks a turning point for the show's entire universe.
In terms of narrative
the fight
direction,
choreography
it's
is
a big
exciting
deal too.
and creative, speaking to both the personalities and the skill sets of every character involved. Yes, even though All For One chooses to throw a real big punch instead of using all the less conventional abilities at his disposal, but we'll get to that. Actually, no, I've got to break format to address this right up front. A lot of this show's detractors have come down on this fight as being uncreative, boring, and just more punching, and while it would be silly and arrogant of me to sit here and tell you that you're wrong if you were bored watching this fight, everyone reacts to things differently after all. I will tell you that you're wrong if you say it's lazy or thoughtless. There's a lot of actual strategy going on in this fight, which we'll get to in a second, but it's also important to consider the intention behind
it's not really dynamic
actions and what All For One is trying to accomplish in the fight.
Not everything interesting has to be
just
dynamic.
To kill All Might, it's to kill him in the most painful way possible and to destroy everything that he represents. To tear down the symbol of peace that
these
he
episodes
spent his
are
entire
really well
life
written,
working to create. Not just because he knows that shaking people's faith in heroes will facilitate a new era of villainy, but because he holds All Might personally responsible
all the cutaway
for
moments of
the
perfect
criminal
do.
enterprise that he's spent his entire life building. He wants revenge. Plain and simple. It's questionable if he even could win with some insane combination of teleportation and claws and other stolen powers, since All Might's whole thing is being strong enough to take on many different villains with different powers at once, but moreover, it wouldn't send the same message. All Might is a guy who can punch any evil, no matter how strong, and make it go away. So if a villain shows up on national television and punches him back even harder, that instantly destroys his symbolic value. And All For One cares a lot about symbolic value. That's why he plucked Nana Shimura's grandson off the streets and groomed him to be his successor, knowing it would devastate All Might. That's why, after a lifetime spent working from the shadows, he was willing to step into the spotlight just for a shot at ruining All Might's reputation. That's why he's okay with ultimately losing and being sent to jail, because he knows that his absence will motivate Shigaraki to achieve new heights of villainy. But I am getting
he really could have escaped in that moment
now, so let's work our way
if he
back
wanted
to the beginning of the fight.
And who was going to stop him?
To simplify things, I'm going to say is the moment when All Might comes soaring in to punch the
That's a cool
supervillain,
moment,
and
for sure.
not the moments where he uses his powers to attack him remotely and stuff like that, since they're more setup than anything else. On that note, what is the setup for this fight? All For One and All Might have a long history. All Might's power, One For All, was created by All For One, and yes, that does get really confusing.
It does. I've seen that trip up a lot of people, but
redistribute quirks, which is also called All For One, and that also gets confusing, to toy with his seemingly quirkless brother long ago. The strength stockpiling quirk that he gave to his brother merged with his dormant ability to pass on quirks to others, creating an inheritable super strength quirk that would get stronger as it was passed down. And every carrier of One For All since then has been training and building power with the aim of stopping the tyrannical mega-villain. After his predecessor and mentor Nana Shimura died trying, All Might was the one who actually pulled it off and stopped All For One once and for all. God, gotta stop writing stuff like that. But it cost him dearly, injuring him to the point that he can only fight crime for an hour each day, and he didn't quite finish the job. All For One spent the following years reclaiming his lost power, building up the League of Villains in the shadows with his crippled body, and grooming Shigaraki to take his place as its leader in order to one day destroy the man who destroyed him. All Might was also forced to choose a successor, Deku, who could carry on as the new symbol of peace in the weakened hero's absence. Knowing that the strength of One For All would one day be needed both as a light to keep villains at bay and a weapon to stop All For One if he ever returned. After Deku's class was attacked by the League of Villains and fended them off a few times, Shigaraki laid eyes on his childhood frenemy, the hot-headed Bakugo. Shigaraki had the League kidnap him during their raid on Class 1A's summer training camp, thinking he could make the brash young hero pull a Sasuke and join the villains. Unfortunately for him, Bakugo responds to this by being all like, "Nah, fuck you, you, I want to be Naruto,
love that.
in one of my favorite character-defining moments in the entire series, and right after that, All Might and co. show up to crash the party. They manage to restrain all the villains in seconds with a carefully laid out plan, while Best Jeanist and Mount Lady capture all of the Nomus in the warehouse in order to prevent them from calling for backup.
Gotta love Mount Lady.
Then All for One shows up out of nowhere, takes all the heroes out at the warehouse, and uses a teleportation quirk to rescue the lead.
I hear he's not actually dead, by the way, which is weird.
Right off the bat,
that
this
looks
introduction
fatal.
confirms All for One's status as the top-tier threat that the story's been building up. He takes out two of the strongest heroes we've met so far.
Just look at the eye fade, and that usually means death in anime.
By dozens of heroes and cops working together single-handedly within the space of 2 minutes. He comes across
I guess sometimes
as
it means
overwhelmingly
unconsciousness,
powerful.
but
His appearance accompanied by a haunting operatic theme song straight out of a horror anime that's unlike
There really
anything
is, yeah,
we've
the
heard
music's
so
great.
so far, because he's a threat unlike any the heroes have faced so far. And as All Might comes flying in to fight him, he's got some big problems to solve.
There we go.
The most fundamental building block of any good fight is what I like to call the question. It's the core problem that each combatant needs to answer if they're gonna win. In a boring fight, the question is something along the lines of, are you stronger than that other guy? And the answer is just, yeah, or no, but this new power I just pulled out of my ass is. In a great fight, the question is something uniquely challenging for your hero, and the answer is something interesting that only they could come up with. This fight poses two really interesting questions right out of the gate. All Might is immediately thrown into a stalemate with All for One because he needs to figure out how to fight the world's greatest supervillain while both protecting Bakugo from the other villains who want to kidnap him again and holding back so that he doesn't hurt the person he's there to save. Meanwhile, Deku and his friends hidden behind the wall are faced with their own question. They have the element of surprise and are the only people with any chance of turning the tide of this battle, but whatever they do, they can't use their quirks to attack the villains because without a hero license, that's against the law. And as aspiring law enforcement agents,
probably wouldn't have went well even if they did.
Deal and a moral line
I think they all know that.
Don't want to cross, or at least Ida doesn't. Deku is all gung ho to do it. Also,
at that point in the story, I think,
to make matters worse,
there we go.
a tight time limit. As All for One,
At that point, I think it's not so much about the law and so much about just we know we can't do this.
Kurogiri's Warp Gate quirk. If any of the 6 villains fighting Bakugo manages to capture him, they'll be able to escape with him in a matter of seconds. And with the heroes inbound following their dicey escape, they're now desperate enough to be willing to hurt Bakugo in order to catch him quickly. The initial skirmish that happens as Deku works through this problem is meant to sell the overwhelming power of All for One, with him knocking All Might through several city blocks in a single blow.
I wish Momo did more in this
Bakugo is attacked
part of the
from
story.
all sides with a wide variety.
She wasn't even really part of the whole
cuts here are fast, and the direction
saving
of the action
Bakugo
on screen
part.
changes almost constantly. This chaotic effect becomes most pronounced as Deku starts thinking of the battlefield like a game board and trying to come up with possible strategies. Every time he realizes an option won't work, we cut to another attack from the villains. This editing really helps to convey his panicked mindset and make us feel the tension that he's feeling. Not an easy thing to do when your protagonist is just standing there thinking. Despite this not being the main event, a lot of care went into the action animation here in order to make this scene fun to watch. There's a lot of character packed into the tiny things, like the insane but playful way that Toga tosses her knives, or the casual cruelty with which All for One attacks All Might, like this fight is trivial to him. And conversely, the desperation with which both Bakugo and All Might are forced to fight. The fight animation here doesn't just look cool, it's in character, which is one of the biggest strengths of My Hero Academia.
I mean, this is really active, the
productions in general.
other villains against
Moments of
Bakugo.
action, Deku finds a solution using his coolest superpower, lateral thinking. Literal lateral thinking in this case, since he's taking a horizontal problem and solving it with verticality. Remembering how All Might came in from the sky, he realizes that while ground routes are all cut off, he might be able to stage an air rescue. They'll be out of range of the other villains, and since All for One is keeping All Might busy, it stands to reason that the reverse would be true as well. He quickly pulls together a plan using the 4 most powerful abilities they have at their disposal. His and Ida's speed to propel them forward, Todoroki's ice to create a ramp that will launch them over the villains, and the most important power of all, the power of friendship.
Yeah.
Because he knows that Bakugo will be far too stubborn to take help from him or even Ida, but as Kirishima's his best friend, he might actually go for it when he extends his hand. Through a few gorgeous and needlessly complex animation cuts, we see the plan in action as Deku explains the details. This is a nice way of showing how
It confuses some people because they think he's planning when it's actually happening.
Action scene to basically show it twice. This whole fight is packed to the brim with Sakuga.
I mean, I like that they
My
do
favorite
that.
sequence aside from the
that's
obvious
cool.
one
That's
has
really
to
cool.
be the moment where Bakugo decides to run away. Shigaraki reaches to grab him and his body twists unnaturally in slow motion, closing in over top of him to cut off his escape. This is a really cool and clever use of perspective, and the kind of shot that's only possible when animators are given the freedom to add their own stylistic flourishes and break character models a bit. It's not visually accurate, but it conveys both Shigaraki's creepy, overbearing personality and Bakugo's stubborn, self-assured defiance in two incredible poses, neither of which is in the manga. And everything that follows, the flash as Bakugo's explosions go off, the remarkable 3D motion as he literally rockets through the air, and the fantastically elastic facial animation as he jokingly chastises Kirishima is equally impressive. I want to know who animated these shots because they deserve all the kudos. To take a broader look at the pacing of the fight, the way that the scene builds up in slow motion using the song I Don't Need Pretend Friends to create tension before bursting into super fast action, picking up after a drop with the faster paced song Trinity, just feels great. The direction of the action also changes here. Before it was all over the place as Bakugo was constantly knocked back and pounded from all sides by the villains. But now the line of action moves quickly and consistently from right to left across the screen. This creates a sense that the heroes have broken the stalemate and are finally moving forward as things go their way. The villains attempt to give chase with Magni's quirk, but they're blocked first by Mount Lady intercepting with a funny goalie-style header, and then by Gran Torino rushing in to stop them before they get a second shot. After this burst of action, the fight slows down for a moment as All Might and Gran Torino banter about Deku's impulsive behavior, and the music cuts out. It's a small victory, a moment of triumph, and this will allow All Might to go all out, but it's over, and there's still a lot of fighting left to go.
Yeah.
What? God, just look at that time code. There's still a whole episode left. What have I gotten myself into? Still, the League of Villains is down to 2, and Gran Torino is ready to take them on as All Might and All for One square off. Fearing that the entire league will be arrested and render his efforts meaningless, All for One uses Magni's magnetism to send them all flying toward Toga and into the warp gate, taking them out of the fight. Shigaraki desperately resists, knowing that if he leaves his mentor behind now, he probably won't see him again. He has a twisted attachment to the man who saved him from the streets, even though Darth Vader over here only did it to fuck with All Might. We see legitimate heartbreak on Shigaraki's face as he's pulled through the portal, crying out in desperation through his chapped lips and hoarse teeth. Damn, this dude is ugly. It would honestly be kind of touching if both parties involved weren't absolute monsters. But then that's another one of My Hero Academia's strengths. It makes all of its villains, even the absolute bastards, at least mildly sympathetic, creating the impression that they have emotions and relationships, albeit very twisted ones, and making them seem like real humans instead of just unfeeling monsters of the weak. All Might tries to at least use this moment as an opening to land an attack, but All for One is a step ahead of him and uses his warp quirk in combination with a shock inversion power to block the blow with Gran Torino's face and throw the force of the punch back at All Might, tearing off his shirt sleeve. After another punch, he uses his air blast to knock the hero back and begins monologuing, like all good villains do, about how much he hates All Might, how he's gonna destroy him, and how even with Bakugo gone, he's going to attack the civilians behind All Might to keep him from going all out. That last point really sets All Might off, and the music swells epically as he shouts back his retort, catching All for One off guard and condemning his selfishness and unearned
really gotta love how
toward
intense
people
All Might
who are
is in
just
this fight.
trying to live their lives. Then he hammers the point home by, well, hammering it home, charging forward too fast for his enemy to react and smashing his face into the dirt, shattering his Darth Vader-esque mask with the impact. Once more, the music cuts out and we see that All Might has pushed himself to his limit. He's on the verge of transforming back into his weakened state, but at least he's delivered the finishing blow. Or not. All for One's
Yeah.
menacing theme picks up once again, blasting away the previously triumphant atmosphere as he reveals his most devastating taunt yet. He's heard All Might's lines about protecting people before from All Might's mentor, Nana. The implication is clear. All Might is doing no better than his predecessor, and if he keeps fighting as is, All for One is confident that he can kill him like he did her. Now All for One, though bruised and battered, once more has the upper hand. Not only is All Might's strength on the verge of giving out, but there are still a ton of civilians around who he needs to protect, putting him at a distinct disadvantage. This is another thing that's essential to a good fight though, a feeling of organic push and pull. One side gets the upper hand, then the other does something clever or tricky to turn the tables, or the winning side exhausts themselves without being able to deliver the finishing blow, leaving their enemy space to fight back and reclaim ground. This back and forth is what makes it feel like both sides are closely matched, so it's not a guarantee that the hero will win, but it doesn't feel like an ass pull when he actually does. You see this structure in everything from anime fights to wrestling matches because it works. It keeps things exciting and tense and prevents
Was that the
fights from
Nichijou
feeling
moment
repetitive
for
or one-sided.
the wrestling?
Following this ominous line from
great.
All for One, we move to the fight's second episode, opening on a flashback to a young All Might discussing his concept for a symbol of peace with his mentor, Nana.
Hope we
These
get more
flashbacks
flashbacks
are the
of her.
first time we've seen the start of the journey that All Might took to become the hero we know today, and it's fitting that they put them in here because this fight marks the end of that journey. They also establish how Nana inspired many of the principles fundamental to All Might's heroic identity. Most importantly, the unflappable smile that he wears to reassure the people he's saving. This context allows us to understand how important she was to All Might and what it means to be fighting her killer and hearing him insult her. And it also sets up a later scene where All Might's memories of her inspire him to get back in the fight when he's at his lowest point. Before jumping back into the fight, we cut away briefly to the kids who've escaped into the crowd and are now watching the fight unfold on TV. These scenes cement the victories earned in the last half of the fight. We now know that all of Class 1A is definitively safe and secure, while giving this second episode a bit more time to ramp back up into the action, since it would be kind of exhausting to just start where the fight left off. After about a minute of this, we do get back to the fight with All for One pinned to the ground, taunting All Might about how Nana was foolish and weak. In part, this is a narrative ploy meant to make us hate him even more than we already do, but it's also a tactic on his part. He's trying to goad All Might into launching a big attack instead of just pummeling him with quick blows, getting the hero off balance so that he can escape from being pinned down. As we can see when he starts coughing after launching All Might away, he has actually taken quite a lot of damage from this fight, but he's working to keep up his composure because it allows him to get under All Might's skin, which he knows is the best way to beat him because, as Gran Torino tells us when he grabs All Might out of the air, that's what All for One did in their last fight before punching a hole in his stomach. A lot of the time in anime, the dialogue exchanged in a fight is just there for emotional context, so it's cool to see this villain deploying psychological warfare as part of his strategy. It makes him seem that much more devious and dangerous. In his pep talk, Gran Torino succinctly sums up the new questions posed to All Might in this stage of the fight. Can he keep his cool while fighting the man who killed his mentor? And can he find a good way to get around the overwhelming power of All for One's combined quirks and sneak in a good hit past his guard, while still defending all of the civilians left around him? The cutaway to the news chopper that All Might just barely avoided crashing into establishes new higher stakes for the fight, which are needed now that Bakugo has been saved. The entire country is watching. Most of Class 1A are sitting in front of their TVs and computers, horrified, while across the country people are complaining that heroes are getting soft.
Still keeps
the
it up
last
even after the
bastion of
internship,
their faith in hero
which,
society being the belief
shows
that All
something.
Might will win this fight in the end. Which means that, if he doesn't, that faith will be shattered. All for One may not be about to literally destroy the planet if he beats All Might, but he may as well be, since giving the #1 hero a public beating will throw the entire nation into chaos. Here, the show is using one of the more unique aspects of its setting, the way that one of its characters has been positioned as a pillar holding up, well, basically the entire world, and uses it to create high narrative stakes that simply wouldn't work in another setting. This also highlights a key flaw with the show's world that needs to be fixed. All of its stability is tied to a single point of failure. And things are about to get worse. All For One gets ready to fire off another blast with his air cannon, which All Might and Gran Torino are about to dodge, except at the last second, All For One points to a civilian caught in the rubble behind them. To save her, All Might takes the blow head on, and the force of it drains the last of his strength, causing him to revert to his emaciated true form. On live television, in front of the entire country.
Yeah.
With just about everyone watching looking surprised, and Deku looking like he just found a spider under the toilet seat as he realizes the full implications of this secret being out. We cut back to the battlefield where All For One continues his taunting. This over-the-shoulder shot paints All Might as small and weak next to the towering villain, showing us the position that All For One thinks that he's in now that he's revealed All Might's secret. But a zoom into All Might's eyes filled with determination shows us that he's wrong. Even in his weakened state, the heroic spirit that made All Might a symbol of peace still burns in his heart, an idea we see embodied in this next shot as his head rises into frame until he's completely eclipsed All For One. This is a fantastic shot, both for the meaning they pack into the cinematography and the effort they put into animating it. They could have easily just used motion tweens with a static image of the back of All Might's head for roughly the same effect, but they actually redraw him as the camera moves down his back to make the shot feel more three-dimensional. One more example of Bones going plus ultra with the animation. But All For One has one more psychological weapon that he's been waiting for the right moment to deploy. His very own version of No, I am your father. The revelation that Shigaraki Tomura is Nana Shimura's grandson. And with this revelation, the already dire music stops, and the soundscape is overwhelmed once again with the villain's chilling theme song. For the first time in the series, we see All Might stunned, at a loss for words, as the implications of this wash over him. Intercut with flashbacks to his master's wisdom about the importance of a hero's smile, which tell us exactly how important it is that All Might keep going, and how terrible a position he must be in to have lost his smile entirely. The hollow, sunken expression that we see here is honestly just about as devastating as any of the actual hits we see doled out in this fight.
If not more so.
Exaggerated by using a twisting camera to show how this information is shifting All Might's world, and by rendering his close-up face in a rough, sketchy art style that suggests he's on the verge of unraveling entirely. This is excellent use of both cinematic language and a stylistic shift that's only really possible in animation. The woman in the rubble makes a cry for help, which seemingly falls on deaf ears, and we cut to the crowd, who are falling into a panic as they watch the symbol of peace seemingly giving up while on the verge of defeat. The scene then plays on one of the oldest cliches in the anime book, the world cheering for the hero to win, sending energy to his spirit bomb or whatever. Except it presents an interesting twist on the concept.
You can't hear that.
This isn't some inspiring moment where all of humanity comes together. It's a moment of collective desperation and delusion, with the whole crowd trying to convince themselves, despite all evidence to the contrary, that All Might will stop the bad guy, because they are personally terrified of what it will mean for them and their society if he doesn't. That's especially true for Deku and Bakugo, who have both built their entire self-image on a desire to be All Might, so naturally they cry out the loudest and most desperately of anyone in the crowd. This makes for one hell of a gut-wrenching low point, but of course, the purpose of bringing your audience down like this is so that it feels all the more impactful when you rocket them back up. Though it throws him off, after taking in this information and thinking about what it really means, All Might once again flexes and responds. After a few moments where we're left wondering what state he's in, we cut to a shot of his face, smiling confidently.
There we
much
go.
As learning this has
really
hurt
is
him,
incredible
all
stuff.
that All For One has really accomplished is strengthening his resolve. Recalling his mentor's advice and the reason he became a hero in the first place, All Might summons up one last burst of strength, but he only has enough power left to bulk up one arm. Still, All For One is on edge because he knows that when he's injured and backed into a corner, All Might is at his most dangerous. This is a particularly great line for what it implies. because if he could see All Might's face when he was doing that, that means that All Might beat his ass blind after he was eviscerated.
I mean,
that's pretty badass, though not as badass as what comes next. All For One comes up
of
with
course
a
that's the
rough
case, 'cause I
estimation
mean,
that All Might has 2 or 3 uses
the way
of
we
his
know
power left
that All Might
before
finished this
effect,
fight was by
meaning
knocking
those
his head
next
like off.
few hits need to really count. But then he gets an assist as Endeavor and Edgeshot arrive to stop All For One from attacking again. And as Endeavor arrives, he starts yelling at All Might, angry that he's so shriveled and weak. This
It's a
ends
great
up
moment
being
for
a huge
Endeavor.
turning point for him as a character. A peek inside his head shows us that he's been chasing All Might's back for years, not unlike Deku, or perhaps more appropriately Bakugo, and he did horrible things to his wife and child in a vain attempt to close that gap through other means. Now, seeing that All Might is just a man, and a pretty weak one at that, he's faced with the truth that it was all for nothing. Naturally, this makes him pretty mad. Right now, he's mad at All
I'm really
Might,
interested
but
to see where
after a
things
bit of
go with
reflection,
Endeavor.
This moment will spark a lot of growth for him as a character moving forward in the story. The pro-heroes step in to distract All For One while their colleagues rescue civilians in the vicinity, leaving All Might finally
His character
free
arc
to fight
could be
them.
very
All
interesting.
Might's position as the #1 hero has allowed him to inspire
Especially now
a
that he is
lot
the
of
#1
other
hero now.
heroes, including the ones helping him right now. He may have started out as the sole pillar holding up Hero Society, and that may be what he is right now, but as I said in my video, it all comes back to All Might. I believe that the kids that he's teaching now will collectively form an even stronger foundation for society in the future, becoming an entire group of the greatest heroes, and me
I
now,
hope
instead
so.
of producing just a single great hero.
I
in
really
Deku.
hope it's
But we
not
don't
just
have
the
much
Deku
time
show
for
in the future.
optimistic story theories, as All For One is still here to ruin the mood, blowing away Edgeshot and the other heroes by firing his air cannon into the ground. Despite this show of strength, his tone has changed. He's still trying to laugh and mock All Might, but he's getting angry now, noticeably losing control. He buffs up his arm
That
into
just
a
doesn't look
twisted
healthy.
mass of flesh and metal with a, quote, ultimate combination of muscle
that's
boosting
just-
and strength enhancing quirks, aiming to crush All Might in a single blow. As he prepares to swing, he makes a clear threat, shouting out Deku's name. He knows who inherited All For One, and once All Might is dead, Deku is next. This is meant to demoralize All Might in his final moments, make him die full of regret, and indeed, things don't look good as the mere impact of the punch, in addition to warping the space around them, kinda shatters all the bones in All Might's arm before he buffs it back up. Apparently, using his muscles to hold the bones together, that's gotta hurt. Although that doesn't hold
Yeah.
the blood in. This has got to be the most brutal damage animation
wow.
we've seen in My Hero Academia so far, and
That's
this is a
crazy.
series where the main character attacks by individually breaking all of his fingers. On that note, bringing Deku up doesn't have All For One's intended effect on All Might. Not only does it harden his resolve further, making him realize that he has to survive in order to reprimand Deku for putting himself in danger, it also gives him an idea. Pushing some of his strength into his back leg, All Might is able to dig in and stop sliding back, and then he takes a page out of Deku's book, transferring all the power out of his right arm and into the left, intentionally letting All For One break it so that he can dodge to the side and clobber him. This catches All For One by surprise, since he never expected that kind of trickery from the straightforward All Might, and he points out that it must be someone else's influence. Seeing All Might's shattered arm and that distinctive Deku purple, we're left to make the connection as to who. And that's not the end of All Might's tricks. All For One starts buffing up his left hand to throw a counterpunch, saying that All Might's hook was weak, but All Might reveals it was supposed to be. He didn't put his back into it. He pulled the punch in order to drop his enemy's guard, and then follow up by going full Deku, delivering the finishing blow from an unexpected angle using his already broken arm.
Yeah.
Deku doesn't know it, but this is a huge milestone in his development. His mentor and childhood hero, the man who gave him his power, wins the final fight of his career using something that he learned from his protege. This
pretty
is
incredible to
Deku
think about.
finally giving back to the man who gave him everything. United States of Smash may just be a punch on paper, but there's a lot of weight behind
It's a
it in every
pretty
sense
special
of the
punch.
word. And that weight is amplified as the show takes its time building up to the final blow. Triumphant music picks up in the background as we see the spark of One For All passed down through generations to Nana, who offers up words of encouragement before finally handing it off to All Might. His shattered arm beefs back up, an explosion goes off behind him, because why not at this point, and he throws one hell of a haymaker. The animation work that went into every frame of this punch is jaw-dropping. As the camera zooms in toward All For One's terrified face, cutaways show the force of the punch traveling up from All Might's pivoting foot to his twisting hips, so he's literally putting his back into it. That's really good punching form. And finally into his fist as it plows straight into the villain's ugly mug and all the way into the ground behind it. That last tiny ember of One For All flares up into a blazing inferno that engulfs the entire screen, and through the flames we see All Might in rough, heavily inked line art delivering one of the best punches and coolest English lines in all of anime, period.
Such a great moment.
The impact is shown in a close-up to demonstrate just how badly All For One's face is getting fucked up here, then a second wide shot to show All Might shattering the ground around them with the force of his fist, and finally an extreme wide shot to show the force of the punch whipping up a tornado strong enough to pick up buildings around them. Here we're seeing the fundamentals of great action animation, anticipation, exaggerated impact, and follow-through taken to their logical extremes. And it makes for an awesome climax to an equally awesome
Okay, maybe
fight.
the animation's better than I remember.
We get this somber, silent
more going on.
The last flame of One For All finally burns out inside of All Might, and the people look on, stunned at the incredible display.
I mean, in terms of quality, I always knew it was top-notch, but just in terms of
in the
stuff
dirt,
going on.
Intimidating breather mask totally destroyed, leaving his figure cut down to the fragile human underneath. And an equally fragile All Might is hunched over him, bleeding. But he's not done. Using strength he doesn't have left, he raises his fist and buffs back up one last time to strike a victory pose as his theme song triumphantly kicks in. In this moment, even though he's about to collapse, he strikes one last blow against All For One, dispelling the fear that he'd sown in everyone's hearts and showing them the symbol of peace that they need to believe in. That is how you finish a goddamn fight. For the people watching, All Might strikes a figure larger than life, emphasized by the camera slowly panning up his body instead of showing the whole pose at once. And the impressively animated crowd starts cheering his name. But for Deku and Bakugo standing in front of him, it's a bittersweet moment, because they both suspect that this fight is the end of All Might, which he confirms as the sun rises over the battlefield with his
Bakugo's
declaration
case,
to the
probably
camera,
more he's thinking about
it's your turn.
it being
While
his
everyone
fault.
else lets out another cheer, Deku breaks down crying,
At least
and
until
Bakugo
Deku starts
just
crying.
stands there watching him, finally understanding both what his rescue has cost his hero and what relationship that hero has with the person he hates most. This knowledge has a heavy impact on Bakugo throughout the rest of the season. As we see in the provisional license exam, it makes him even angrier, but outside of fights, he becomes more pensive. It also deepens his animosity toward Deku, and we're about to see that come to a head in the next few episodes of the anime. Having read the manga, I'll probably make at least one video out of that. But really,
I would hope
this
so.
fight
In that
impacts
fight-
every last character in the series.
That's
The
a big
villains,
one.
though shaken, become emboldened with All Might forced into retirement, and are only going to come back stronger and in greater numbers as time goes on. With All Might out of the picture, the world now has to place its faith in other top heroes like Endeavor, who has a lot of shit to figure out on his own if he's ever going to be the kind of hero that All Might was. And Deku, though not ready to take up All Might's mantle, kinda has to now. This puts him under a lot of pressure to come into his own as a hero and master One For All in order to stop the threat posed by Shigaraki and his cronies. And last but not least, the city is going to be paying off the repair bill for this fight for a long freaking time. As I said at the top of this video, this is a truly standout fight, and it kinda has to be. It
You really
marks
don't
the
even
effective
notice
end
while
of
watching
Act
it so
1
much
in
just
My Hero
how
Academia's
big the
Rise
damage to the
story,
city
and has
is.
to pull a lot of weight in shifting the status
so
quo
focused
of
on the
show's
characters,
world. The fight
but-
gives the show's main and supporting cast a lot of opportunities to both show off and grow, and it packs a lot of great dialogue, plot progression, and character development, as well as a little bit of backstory, into less than an hour of television. The emotional impact created through that storytelling contributes to a lot of the hype factor of that final punch, but it's not just the writing that makes this fight strong. On a technical level, it's extremely impressive, featuring incredible Sakuga cuts that are placed at perfect moments for maximum impact, while still keeping the animation throughout the rest of the battle at a consistently high level of quality. Every attack feels significant in terms of how it moves the story forward, how it's thought out and executed by by the combatants, and how it's executed by the animation team. The characters involved have to actually think around the layout and unique characteristics of the arena where they're fighting, and the shot composition and editing used to convey it.
Personally, I don't really consider this stuff part of the same fight.
I could
exactly.
some flaws here. Sometimes Gran Torino's commentary feels a bit redundant, and if you think about it, Bakugo could have probably gotten away on his own, but really, that stuff doesn't matter in the face of the incredible moments.
Yeah, that's a fair point, I'd say.
It's
I don't know.
close to perfect as anime fights get, building up from a great starting point to one of the most viscerally exciting and emotionally satisfying conclusions I've had the pleasure of watching. I fully realize that not everyone
they would have chased
loves My
him.
Hero Academia, but fights like this are one of the big reasons that the people who do love it so damn much. Coverage of this fight was brought to you by our sponsor, Dollar Shave Club. You probably know Dollar Shave Club for the incredible value of their monthly razor subscription, and I can attest to their razors both being affordable
will
and
never be one of my
remarkably high
sponsors.
quality. They're pretty much the only razors I've been able to use without leaving my face scarred up like Deku after a bad fight. But they do so much more than keep your face smooth. Dollar Shave Club now sells a huge variety of bathroom products to help you through every stage of your morning grooming routine. From toothbrushes and toothpaste to shampoo, conditioner, and cleansers for the shower to creams and balms to keep your skin feeling smooth all day long. They've also got a variety of hairstyling products, including gel, clay, paste, and pomade, all made with the same high quality and same low price that Dollar Shave Club is known for. But you don't have to take my word for it. Head to dollarshaveclub.com/basement to get their daily essentials starter kit, and you'll be able to try out their executive razor, their easy shave butter, their aromatic lavender body cleanser, and their fancy peppermint scented butt wipes, all for just $5. It's a heck of a deal that's honestly worth it just for the razor and shave butter alone. Click the link in the doobly-doo or go to dollarshaveclub.com/basement to get yours today.
All right.
Let me know in the comments below what other fantastic fights you'd like to see me cover on Animelee. And while you're down there, if you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Mother's Basement to catch every video that I make from here on out. I'm Jeff Thu, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.
Well, there we go. That was a good video. I think that made me appreciate that fight even more. And I really appreciate it. I mean, I know it kind of feels like I'm going after it. I just still kind of feel that in terms of like dynamic action, that's not really what it's about. It's about just the impact. And that's fine. I mean, it's still, I would say it's one of the best fights in the series by far, if not the best. But, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, really, really good video. He does a good job of breaking it down and highlighting the key moments, and there are a lot of them in that fight. And, yeah, it was interesting. And if you didn't notice, I'm pretty hyped for My Hero. I've been reading, been watching a lot of reactions, and actually, I said this on the live reaction stream the other day, but or was it on it was on one of the streams that I've done since returning, but I actually bought the live novels for the series and read those, and that was pretty fun. Or at least the first three, don't worry. The fourth one, I know it's set later in the series, so I haven't read that. I don't want to spoil myself on anything. But, yeah, the Season 4, really excited to get to the reactions for that, which will be coming fairly soon. Going to do all these Patreon videos before I get to it, but once the Patreon videos are done, I'm going to get back to series reactions, and My Hero will be pretty soon. I think I got one more Shield Hero video to do, I think. I'm pretty sure it'll be only one. I mean, maybe two, but no, I'm pretty certain, in fact, that it is just one more Shield Hero video that needs to happen, and then I can go to My Hero for the Thursday slot, and that'll be cool. And I just can't wait to see what Season 4 gives us. I've heard mostly good things. I mean, some people on the stream the other day were saying more mixed things, but I've heard a lot of people say it's their favorite season yet, so I don't know. But I'm excited for it, and just excited for the series in general, and this was a good video to kind of capture a bit of that excitement, I say. Anyway, hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.